right, here we are.
Hello. Hi.
Another podcast, training our brain to work for us, not against us.
Yeah.
And finding our inner superpowers with the brain type test at braintype.me is the address for that.
Yep.
I'm PJ, and you are?
Athena. Hello.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm the founder of the Xgym and of the brain type test, and Athena's a trainer here.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked a lot about things in the past with your brain type because you took the test, and your main is the overseer.
Mm-hmm.
That's your main brain type. And your secondary is the defender.
Yes.
So we were looking for a brain training exercise to talk about today, and we've talked about all the overseer brain training techniques.
There's a lot of us, I guess.
Actually, it's the most common brain type.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the number one. And then the defender, we can talk about a new technique that we haven't talked about yet on the podcast. And that's basically some extra hacks on transforming when people have cravings to break that pattern.
Oh, this is perfect.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because, everybody says that, because we all have cravings.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, this is a few different techniques kind of rolled into one. But I've used this, and I used to have lots of cravings. And I still have lots of cravings.
Mm-hmm.
But the cravings now that I have are for things like broccoli. Instead of the corner piece of the chocolate cake with extra frosting, and there's a bonus if there's a flower on it.
Oh, that's the best part.
I know. See, I used to be that way.
Yeah.
And huge sweet tooth. I still have one, but now I eat fitness chocolate. Oh, by the way, I brought down some cookies covered in fitness chocolate.
Okay.
That you're going to be able to sample.
Oh.
Yeah, I just made them last night. So I coated them like three coatings, layers of fitness chocolate. And the cookie itself is a keto cookie.
Oh, okay.
It's like an Oreo, but it's keto, so it's low carb.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I'm going to feel good eating it.
You
and not,
will.
You know, I can eat like 2 or 3 and be fine.
You could, yeah. But things like that will satisfy my sweet tooth.
Yeah.
But it's funny because since I've used these techniques and rewired, the cravings that I used to have disgust me now. So I still like my fitness chocolate, but when I think of that corner piece of chocolate cake,
Mm-hmm.
I dry heave a little bit. So it's all about brain wiring. And all of the brain training techniques are specific to brain wiring to literally rewire the brain.
Yeah.
So you're thinking differently and you're acting differently. And when you act differently, you get different results.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the key. And rewiring the brain isn't on most people's radar. They didn't even heard of that. They didn't even know it's possible. So that's another thing that sets the Xgym apart, is that we have this secret superpower hack where we can help people above and beyond other gyms, because the other trainers at other gyms tell their clients what to do, and then their client has a struggle.
Right.
And then they come back and they say, I don't know what's wrong with me. I can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And the trainer's like, well, just have some willpower, suck it up and just do it. And the trainer suggests things that work for them, mm-hmm. because by trial and error, they found things that work for them. They didn't know they were brain training, but they stumbled across stuff, and now they prescribe all those things to their clients, but different trainers prescribe different things because different things work for different trainers.
Right.
And so then they assume everything that works for them is going to work for their client. And then when it doesn't, they're like, well, just suck it up. But it's that their client has different brain wiring. And there's 16 different brain types. And among those 16, the trainer has one, and a primary, secondary, or just a primary. Most people have a primary and secondary.
Mm-hmm.
And their client has another brain type. And so the stuff they're telling their client to do that works for them doesn't work for the client. And the client gets really frustrated, and they get in a fight, and everybody gets mad at each other.
Yeah. Not good.
But with the brain training and the brain type test, we figure out the kind of brain type someone has. And then I can prescribe specific brain training techniques that are going to work for their type. So your primary type is the overseer.
Mm-hmm.
Your secondary is the defender. And so a lot of the brain training techniques for both types are going to work. The overseer is going to be more effective because that's your primary. But the secondary brain type has a lot of good stuff too. And when you put your two brain types together and you compare your brain training techniques on the third page of the PDF that you get from the braintype.me test, you see which are repeated.
Mm-hmm.
And there's usually at least one that's repeated, sometimes more. My 2 brain types are actually really similar to each other. So I have 4 out of the 6 repeated between my 2 brain types.
Mm-hmm.
But someone else might have opposite brain types, and they would only have 1 or maybe 2 brain training techniques repeated. But when you see the repeats, those are the superpower hacks.
Right.
So you're like, okay, I'm going to start with those. And on your secondary defender, we have this brain training technique that helps to transform a craving and to basically to hack it and short circuit it, kind of like the EFT technique does, but in a different way. Because any craving is just a pattern in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And then acting on that craving is also a pattern and a habit. And so cracking that code can take that craving away.
Right.
Every time that we're using a nerve pathway, we're making it deeper and stronger. And when we stop using it, it'll atrophy. And the best way to stop using a pathway is to replace it with another pathway. So now we're making the other one stronger and then atrophying the original one. That's why my chocolate cake pathway is atrophied and my broccoli pathway is strengthened.
Yep.
Because I've done that with the brain training. And now the chocolate cake pathway is so atrophied that just the thought of it disgusts me. Where I used to, I couldn't wait. It was an uncontrollable craving. So the first step on this one here is to label the food that you're eating. And so let's just say that it's potato chips. A lot of people like chips.
Yeah.
So you're sitting down in front of the TV and that's your trigger. And then you want potato chips because that's a pattern. So the first step is to give it a label.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to call it Charlie Chip Eater. So then what that does is it calls it out of your subconscious where it is living as a pattern and into your conscious, your prefrontal cortex. So now you can think about it logically. And you're thinking about it differently now because we just pulled it out of one part of the brain into another part of the brain. So we've transformed it already just by giving it a name. Then visualize a character, a face, or a character to go with it, like a Smurf or something silly.
Charlie Brown.
Okay. So you're thinking of Charlie Brown, that's great. And then give it a funny voice. So a silly voice, something that makes you laugh. Something out of, what's that show? It's really funny, but it's also really offensive.
Oh, Family Guy?
Yeah, that's one of them. Yeah. It can be
South
in that.
Park?
South Park. That's the one I'm
go.
thinking of. Yeah. I don't watch TV anymore. I got rid of my TV in 2008.
Yeah, we don't have cable anymore.
And so, yeah. So, because it's so toxic.
Yep.
Anyways, so South Park.
Yeah.
So something like that makes you laugh, that's funny.
Mm-hmm.
So you've just given it a name, you've given it a character so you can picture it. And now you give it a funny voice and then talk to that character when you feel the craving.
Mm-hmm.
And you can say something like, oh, Charlie Chip Eater, here you are again. And then you imagine Charlie Chip Eater talking back to you, maybe even arguing with you and fighting for his right to eat chips.
Just picturing Cartman doing it this entire
Cartman,
time. Yeah.
perfect. Yeah, I've heard someone else say that
Yeah.
name when they go to funny voices. So Cartman is arguing back about that. And the thing is here that thoughts cause actions, and thoughts are real, but they're just in our head, okay? And so we're calling it out and we're making it something besides just a thought. And we're treating it as something real, which puts it in your prefrontal cortex.
Right.
So then you're having a little conversation, and now ask Cartman why you're having this craving, and see what Cartman says, or whoever your character is.
Mm-hmm.
So you're asking, and you'll probably get the truth, because you're asking your subconscious, why do I crave this? And try to get an answer, and then analyze it, and sit there for a while, and try to figure out why. And then you may or may not get an answer, but at least now you've triggered your subconscious to think about it. So now, even when you're asleep at night, especially if you do this within the last 90 minutes of going to bed, your subconscious will rehearse overnight and think about it more and try to answer that question for you while you're asleep. So you don't even have to really have an occupied mind about it. And then refocus and picture something that's healthy. So now you're thinking, okay, instead of eating these chips, what else could I have?
Mm-hmm.
And in the previous question, when you asked yourself why, your character might have said, well, it's crunchy.
Right.
And it's satisfying to have that crunch. So then you're saying, okay, what could I refocus on that would be crunchy? Celery's crunchy.
Yep.
And so what yummy thing could I dip that in? Well, guacamole. That's a keto kind of a thing. I just actually sometimes I'll have celery and I'll just put salt on it.
Yeah.
There are also low carb chips, and there are low carb crackers that are crunchy. I toast coconut chips,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll just put them in the oven and broil them for just like 2 or 3 minutes is enough to toast them. And those are delicious.
You might have to bring that down.
Oh
Sounds
my
good.
gosh, and they're so crunchy. So that would be something, or the keto cookie that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
That would be crunchy. Of course, you don't want to have a whole bag of those, but if you're
You
really
know.
looking for a crunch, or the keto granola, have that at Costco.
Right. Yep.
Something with the crunch, but that's just one example. It might be something else besides a crunch. So then you're just analyzing and you're refocusing on that thing. And then at the end, you want to do a debrief. Specifically say, my brain makes me think blank, and that makes me miss out on blank. And that's your debrief. So when you do that, you are blaming your brain, which is, the right source.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't be any external, it's the way I was raised or blah, blah, blah. Sure, that might have been why your brain is like that. But your brain, when you blame your brain, it's part of you, and now you're in control.
Mm-hmm.
So you're taking control of the situation and putting the blame, it's kind of a weird word, but putting it on yourself, which sounds bad,
Mm-hmm.
but no, because that gives you control of it.
Right.
So it's in your brain, it's your brain, and you're saying, my brain makes me think blank. So in this case, it might be chips are yummy. And that makes me miss out on blank. So maybe something like being healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the debrief. And then when you're done with this, whether you feel like it worked or not, because this is a skill that gets better with practice, regardless, you did it. So then you throw your arms up in a victory pose.
Yes.
Yeah, and say something like that. Yes,
I did it.
I did it. Or I'm awesome. Or something to celebrate what you just did. And then last thing is, you've heard me talk about the subconscious brain being like a toddler, because it operates on the level of a 3-year-old.
Totally does.
And I call it my toddler. And you can even name your toddler. Mine's Timmy. You can be Cartman. But
Yeah.
but since the toddler really is in control, the prefrontal cortex, I call the parent brain, can program the toddler, but the toddler's still going to be in control. So our job is just to teach the toddler and raise the toddler right. Because instead of trying to fight it for control, we just acquiesce and then say, all right, I'm just going to have to program it and raise it right. And this is one of the ways to do it. And all this stuff makes sense to the toddler, especially the victory pose. Even if it feels silly or you don't feel successful and so you don't feel like you should do it, you do it anyways.
Yeah.
Because the toddler doesn't know that you're acting. Just like a toddler wouldn't if you did that in front of a toddler. And so that's why it's so effective. Now, the toddler, as it sees you changing your brain, it might try to sabotage you with either helping you to forget to do this technique.
Right.
So
yeah.
you remember after you've eaten the chips, conveniently after,
Mm-hmm.
and that's your toddler making you forget. So you give in and you eat the chips, because toddlers don't like change, and he likes his chips. He likes that pattern.
Yeah.
Or maybe just procrastinate. Maybe your toddler will say, yeah, totally, that's a great idea, but, let's just do that next time, because you deserve it this time. You had a really hard day, and chips are going to help with that, and whatever the procrastination reason is to put it off. So then you notice that's happening, and then you can even talk to your toddler and just say, I caught ya.
Mm-hmm.
Nope, not this time. We're doing it. And then you go through these steps, and then the victory pose at the end. And the first time you do this, it'll be hard. The second time is twice as easy.
Right.
The third time is twice as easy again, and you'll get better at it, and it becomes more effective every time you do it, until pretty soon it's easy and it works like crazy on everything. And then you're transforming those neural pathways, atrophying the bad ones, deepening the good ones, and then you're thinking differently and acting differently. And that's the whole purpose of this brain training and all these different techniques that I have that are in the brain type test. And then you change permanently. This is the reason that people can have permanent results. Whether they know it or not, if someone does get permanent results, and that's 5% of the New Year's resolutionaries.
Right. Yep. Yep.
The 5% that do changed their brain.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know they did. They did it by accident. This is doing it on purpose. And so the probability of success goes way up with brain training because you're rewiring your brain. So the 5% of the New Year's resolutionaries that do succeed, sure, they're improving their body, but they're also improving their brain. And if they do it at the same time, then when they achieve their results and they get all these great results here, if both are the same, they've both improved brain and body along the way, now they're stuck that way. But here's what happens with most people. Their brain stays down here. They get their improvements with their body, but because they didn't change their brain, the brain always wins, and it snaps the body back down and they yo-yo. That's the reason for the yo-yo. So if people aren't changing their brain along with their body, they're just going to go back. The bottom line really is atrophying those bad pathways and strengthening the new pathways, making the new pathways. And the reason that it's twice as easy each time is because the first time you do any kind of brain training technique, you're making a new pathway and the brain is resistant to that because your toddler is. But it's like beating a path through the forest. The first time through that path is hard work. And then the second time through that path, now you see stuff you missed and you're fine-tuning, and it's so much easier because you already did the lion's share of the work. Then the third time it's easier, and now you're beating it down with your feet. You're making a path just because you're using it, and it gets stronger. That's what a neural pathway is like, and that's what it does. And so that's why it also gets easier and more effective every time you do it. And then it's also important to remember the toddler. And anything that works on a toddler is going to work on reprogramming your subconscious. Images and emotions are what the toddler understands. That's his language, her language in your case.
Yeah.
And so if you can make it emotional, like the victory pose, yes, even if you're pretending, it works because the toddler doesn't know
Fake
you're
it till you make
pretending.
it, I guess.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. You're doing it through images like we already talked about, and emotion at the end that drives it further into the subconscious brain and helps you remember. So not only does the technique get easier, but it's easier to remember the more you do it too. And so that itself becomes a pattern.
This is a really good topic about just trying to rewire it,
Yeah.
It's something that I haven't even thought about, like what you're saying. Most people don't think about it until I started working here. So
Right.
yeah, it's really good.
People that come here are busy people,
Oh yeah.
and they don't have time to work out, or they just don't want to spend time working out. And so same thing in the kitchen. They don't have time to be in their kitchen, or they just don't want to spend time in their kitchen. And so we have a solution for that on the recipe page.
Yeah. And I feel like normally when you crave something, it's like your brain's like chips,
Yeah.
ice cream. And it's like immediate. You have to go to the store or like go get out of your pantry or something. So making a quick little thing is way easier than trying to go the easy route and just opening that bag of chips again. So yeah, it's good that they're
Totally.
nice and quick so people can just get it done. Yep.
Yes, exactly. You're right.
Yep.
Because when the hunger monster hits, it wants something now. And that's coming out of the subconscious, and it's usually an emotional reaction.
Yeah.
Hunger is never urgent.
No.
It's emotional. You just think it is.
Yeah.
And people get hangry because of the sugar highs and lows.
Yeah.
And that's because they just eat a lot of carbs. But it's still emotional. It's not actually real. Real hunger happens after about a week. Anybody can make it a week without dying, without eating any food, just getting the water. So it's emotional. And there are hacks to that. And this is one of them, but this is more for cravings than hunger. And also, bottom line is, in this country, we are so blessed. If you live in a city somewhere, food is 1,000 feet away. That's the farthest it is. But you go to other countries in the world, it's not that way.
No.
And they're actually thinking about what or if they're going to eat next. And they know what hunger feels like. But even our homeless are well fed. That's how well off we are. So that's another thing to just be mindful of and to be thankful of, to be gratitude. Because we're really blessed in this country. And it's a good thing to keep that in mind. So that's all I have to say about that.
About that. Thank you.
Boom.
And that's all I have to say about that.